Joke. Crazy jokes. Yeah, I'm Crazy Joe. I be running through the snow. Got no pants, got no shirt, got no money.
Good morning. Welcome back to Crazy Joe's Concession Stand. I'm Crazy Joe. We're doing the Dog Days of Podcasting, a podcast today, every day for the month of August. And we've only got a couple left. This is actually the second to last. Chris A. Moody was talking about how there hasn't been a lot of interaction this time around. We tend to, the different podcasters taking, by the way, if you don't know what the Dog Days of Podcasting is, go to dogdaysofpodcasting.com. You can subscribe to the mega feed. A whole lot of podcasters are taking part in this, and traditionally in past years, and also this year, maybe not quite as much this year, but there is a lot of interaction between what we're all saying. One podcaster will say something and we'll respond, and it becomes sort of like a flowing conversation. So if you really want to be on the loop, you got to listen to them all, and you can do that by subscribing to the mega feed. So Chris A. Moody, one of our podcasters, was commenting about how there hasn't been as much interaction this year. I think there's definitely been some. Why there's been less, I don't know. It seems like we have less participants this year. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But you're in luck, Chris, because today my whole plans, I was here to talk to you about something, and everything changed when I heard Nutty's Last Dinner in a Movie, because I wanted to respond to Nutty. So this is going to be completely an interaction with one of our other Dog Days participants. So I just got back from the movies. I was planning to talk about The Toxic Avenger. There's a remake of The Toxic Avenger, the 1984 schlock film that many 80s kids watched very, very late at night on, Up All Night with Gilbert Gottfried, or, Monster Vision with Joe Bob. It was like a schlocky late night, cable movie that you would watch. It played in some theaters in 1984, but most people, I think, saw this movie on television, either through schlocky late night cable or video rentals. It's the movie that put Trauma Pictures on the map. And it just got remade. And shockingly, this low-budget schlock film got an all-star cast. Peter Dinklage is in it, and Kevin Bacon is in the remake of Toxic Avenger, and Elijah Wood. So this little low-budget 80s schlock film has led to a remake with an all-star cast. And I saw it tonight, and I was going to come here, and I was going to talk to you about the Toxic Avenger. But then, on the ride home, I heard Nutty's new Dinner in a Movie, in which she talks about the Thunderbolts. Now, this is why I needed to respond, because Nutty floored me. She absolutely shocked me with one of the opening things she said. And that was that she had been reluctant to watch the Thunderbolts because everyone told her it was terrible. And I mean, my jaw was agape when I heard this, because I have not heard anyone at all say it was terrible. Now I've known Nutty for a long time. If Nutty tells you she heard it was terrible, you can take it to the bank. She heard it was terrible. She's not gonna make that up. I don't know where she heard that, but clearly she heard that. But what's really surprising about this is the Thunderbolts, since the time it was released in May, has universally been praised by most people. The professional critics gave it an 88% score on Rotten Tomatoes, and most of the reviews were led with things like "Marvel is back. Marvel finally is back. Marvel's slump is over." People were not only praising Thunderbolts, they were kind of over praising Thunderbolts. And that was just the professional critics. The professional critics, I said, gave it an 88%. On Rotten Tomatoes verified user score, these are people who are, verified to have purchased a ticket and gone to the movies. It's sitting at a 93%. It's even higher than the critic score. And the cinema score is an A minus. So this film got very high scores across the board, both from professional critics, moviegoers, fans. It did not perform well at the box office, but as we've talked about before, box office performance and quality are two completely different things. And in fact, when it didn't perform well, a lot of people were sitting there musing, this film is like the best thing Marvel's put out in years. How come? How come people didn't go see it? Like, people for years have been saying, oh, the quality's kind of dipping on Marvel. And then you get this film that everyone agrees is just top notch, and it didn't do so well. And it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of Dog Days of Podcasting, where people talk about superhero fatigue. And I always say superhero fatigue is not real. It is not a real thing. There is no such thing as superhero fatigue. People keep using superhero fatigue when superhero movies underperform at the box office, but what they're ignoring is that almost everything is underperforming at the box office. It's not just superhero films, it's everything. The box office is suffering. It's not any one genre. Pixar films are suffering. Superhero films are suffering. Original IP is suffering. Comedies are suffering. Action films, you name it, across the board, the box office is down. And people will always go and they'll name like the 3 movies that did really well. And they'll go, well, what about Lilo and Stitch that made $1 billion? What about Barbenheimer? What about Super Mario? And it's like, look, if you can name all the big hits on one hand, you're illustrating my point. Because in 2019, before the pandemic, you couldn't do that. You couldn't just rattle off a handful of hits and go, there you go, there are the hits. There were a lot of hits. Now there's not a lot of hits. So the fact that you can name them all that quickly, it tells you there's a problem. But Thunderbolts hit Disney Plus this week, and it shot right to the top of the charts on Disney Plus. Everybody's watching this on Disney Plus. And then what does that tell you? That tells you that as soon as people had the opportunity to watch it at home, they jumped on it. That shows you interest. People are interested. People wanted to see the Thunderbolts. People right now, for whatever reason, and I don't like it, and I think we need to fix this. We got to find a way to fix it. People right now are not going out to the theater to support these films with their dollars, and that's a problem. But as soon as they come home, they are watching them. Captain America: Brave New World, which did very poorly in theaters, has been like number 1 on Disney Plus for something like 3 weeks until Thunderbolts came out, like 3 or 4 weeks. Like it had like an insane run as the number 1 movie on Disney Plus. And a lot of people were like, dude, everyone's watching this movie that nobody went to see. And that tells you the interest is there. It's not a lack of interest. It's a lack of interest in getting up off your ass and going to the theater. And that's a different thing. But I'm really curious. I don't know if Nutty has time to respond to this because we are in the last couple of days of Dog Days. But I'm really curious as to where she was hearing that it was bad. Because I do believe she heard that. Like, I've known Nutty for years. And she tell you, she's trustworthy. She tells you she heard that. But that statement is so foreign to me because I've been hearing nothing but praise for this film since May, to the point where the movie has been so well received by fans and critics that Marvel immediately hired the director. What's his name? Jake Schrader, I believe is his name. But they immediately hired that director again because of how well Thunderbolts was received. Jake Schreier, he is directing the X-Men now. He got the X-Men gig, and he's going to direct the X-Men movie for Marvel solely on the reception that the Thunderbolts had, because people liked it so much that they were like, oh, yeah, this guy's proven himself, and he got X-Men. So I'm really fascinated that she said she kept hearing it, which tells me she heard it from more than one person, which I find fascinating. Because that hasn't really been the narrative around this film. So I'm confused by that, but I find it fascinating. Like I changed my whole topic for tonight when I heard that, because I was like, what? I also want to respond to Nutty. She thought it should have been a TV show, and I want to tell you, you're going to be seeing a hell of a lot less Marvel TV shows. You're going to be seeing a lot less of them. Because one of the things that Disney fears is that during the pandemic, they leaned into television too much. And that part of the reason films have been suffering at the box office is because Marvel has turned into a TV brand. They've been putting out so many TV shows that there's this attitude of, well, you know, we got all these TV shows. Maybe we don't have to go to the movie. There's also an idea out there that people feel there's homework involved with seeing a new movie. For example, John Walker was introduced on Captain America and the Winter Soldier, the TV show. And he's in this movie, The Thunderbolts. And what's her name? Yelena and Red Guardian were introduced in the Black Widow movie. And the Ghost was introduced in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And there's this idea out there that people think, well, if I haven't seen all of these things, I'm not going to understand the new movie. I need to, they call it homework. They say there's this idea out there that there's all this homework. It's part of the reason people think the Marvels suffered. The Marvels, wonderful movie, by the way, sequel to Captain Marvel, but it featured the characters of Miss Marvel, who was introduced on a TV show, and Photon, who was introduced on a different TV show. So the idea is people thought, well, if I didn't watch every episode of WandaVision, and if I didn't watch every episode of Miss Marvel, I'm going to be lost in this film, so I can't go see the film. Now, the problem there is those films don't really require a lot of homework. You don't need to have seen Miss Marvel. You don't need to have seen WandaVision. If you have, you'll appreciate it more. It will certainly enrich the experience. But any bit of information that is required for the viewer is provided in the film. They don't assume, you know, that you've seen everything. They're going to tell you what you need to know. A perfect example is the Superman movie. Everybody loved the Superman movie this year. It was just, everybody praised that film. But if you look, they throw you right into the universe. And Mr. Terrific and Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, and Hawkgirl, and Metamorpho, these characters get no kind of origin story. We're just in a world where these superheroes exist, and we see Superman out doing things, and suddenly the Justice Gang shows up, and here's Mr. Terrific, and here's Hawkgirl, but we don't get any backstory for them. And you don't need it. You don't need it. Because they don't have a backstory yet. Not one that's been told. Obviously, the characters have a backstory, but not one that's been told. There's no TV show, there's no movie that spells out who these people are. And that's okay, because that knowledge is not necessary to the story being told. Nothing from those characters, anything that you need to know is provided to you by the film Superman. So if you don't know the origin story of Mr. Terrific, it doesn't matter, because that doesn't play into what story they're telling. And it's the same thing with the Marvels. If you didn't see Miss Marvel, if you didn't see WandaVision, you may not know the backstory of Photon or Miss Marvel, but there's no homework required, because the film is going to tell you whatever it is you need to know about these characters, because they're not going to assume that you've seen it. Same thing with John Walker in the Thunderbolts. They're going to assume maybe you haven't seen Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And if there's pertinent information that you need, it's going to be provided by the film you're watching. So there's never been homework required to watch an MCU movie. But the problem is that there's a perception that there's homework required. And I think Marvel's been failing in their messaging. They need to get the message out that, no, every one of these things does stand alone. You don't need to have seen the Marvels, or, you know, you don't need to have seen Captain America. We'll tell you what you need to know in this film. But that has been hurting the MCU. And as a result, Bob Iger and Kevin Feige have flat out said that they're going to be doing less on television. So you will be seeing less TV shows. There'll be a few, like Daredevil. Daredevil's still a TV show. And he said that the shows that are TV shows are going to be more self-contained. You're not going to see as much interplay between TV characters and movie characters because they don't want to create that false impression to the audience that if you didn't see this, you're not going to get that. So that's part of the reason why Thunderbolts wasn't a TV show. Marvel's kind of stepping back from TV shows. They want to put their focus back on the theatrical brand. The other is that this film was intended to be the lead-in to the next Avengers movie. And if you've seen the movie, you know how. I'm not going to give it away, but the film definitely does plant the seeds for the next Avengers movie in a big way. So this was meant to be a precursor to Avengers Doomsday. So that's another reason why it was a movie. But anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Nutty. I did too. I saw it 3 times in the movies. I really enjoyed it. It's a really fun movie. Red Guardian's the best character. I love Red Guardian. But yeah, no, I love this movie. And generally speaking, amongst most fans, it's been very well received. So I am curious to hear where you were hearing. I know it hasn't been popular with a lot of right-wing grifters. A lot of those like YouTubers, those far right-wing YouTubers, they didn't like it because it was quote unquote woke. You know, the lead character was a woman. What? Yelena was the lead? Can't have that. That's woke. You know, these a-holes. So I don't know if you heard some of that discussion. I know Nutty's not one to buy into that crap, but maybe through osmosis she heard that, and it, you know, through a filter somewhere, had the idea of, oh well, this movie wasn't received. That's possible. I know we talked on this channel about The Acolyte not long ago, and I have a coworker who never watched The Acolyte, never saw a single episode. And I said something to her about The Acolyte, and she goes, oh yeah, I heard some online reviewers said that it was really bad. Well, those online reviewers were extreme right-wing grifters who were going on about how woke it was. She didn't actually watch the review, so she didn't know that was the angle it was coming from. Because again, my coworker, she's not like that. But that's why these guys are really dangerous, these like extreme right-wing YouTubers, because their ideas kind of percolate out into the public and it gets filtered down. So you'll hear somebody say that's not good, but you won't hear their reasoning, because if you hear their reasoning, you'll know, oh, their opinion really is worthless. You'll just kind of hear shreds. That's why I think those guys are really bad for the culture. But anyway, everyone have a good night. We got one more of these left, and keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas with the plastic feet. Keep wearing those pajamas. Tell everyone you meet. Keep wearing those pajamas with the back door flap. Keep wearing those pajamas. Don't open it, it's a trap. Oh no, it's a trap. Some people call them PJs. Some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander pajamas, but no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas. I know we're having fun. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now the song is done.